here, man. If it lets us.
All right.
So it should show it here in a minute. Yeah, we are good to go. This out of the way. All right. What's up, everyone? I'm here with Irvi Rodriguez. Vey Rodriguez. We're going to talk about his life and music. What's up, Irv?
Not a whole lot, brother. Just here, quarantining.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I hear you, man. I hear you. Crazy, crazy times.
Very much so, yeah.
So I just want to ask you some questions, just kind of going over your musical life, okay?
Sure.
So the first question I always like to ask is, did you have any relatives, like a mom or dad, uncle or somebody, grandparents that were involved with music?
Not in my immediate family. My grandfather, we have pictures of my grandfather playing guitar. And an uncle of mine, he wrote music, but it was traditional Mexican music, like mariachi music for his son, who recorded a couple albums in Texas. But aside from my uncle, nobody really, that knew how to play.
Okay.
Not in any bands or anything.
Uh-huh. So no uncles, no grandparents or anything?
Just the one uncle.
Played?
Yeah, the one uncle. Like I said, I think my grandfather just played it for fun. He owned a bar, and I think he played it around the bar just for kicks.
Okay. What about any cousins or anything like that play? Either older than you or same age or younger?
Yeah, well, that uncle who I had, his kids took on, his daughter sings now, and her son sings as a mariachi, and her older brother, who was the one who recorded in the studio. They were the musical family at the time when we were growing up. Like I said, it was traditional Mexican music. And my cousin, he recorded with some pretty well-known people. Actually, I don't know if you know Pedrito Fernandez. I don't know if you recognize the name, but he opened
the name, yeah.
Yeah, he did a show in Mexico at the bullfighting ring, and my cousin opened up for him in that time. So we got pictures of him with Pedrito Fernandez in the mariachi hat and everything.
So. Nice. So did they ever like when you were around them, was this on like on your mom's side, your dad's side of the family?
It was on my mom's side of the family. My dad's side, didn't have any musicians in the family. He was always perplexed, my dad, with the idea of me being able to write a song. He just couldn't understand how that could happen. So when it comes to the roots in the family, it would be my mom's side.
Okay.
Yeah, my one uncle, whose name was Pedro.
Okay. And so besides besides that one cousin, there really wasn't too many or any involved?
Nobody. No. No. Not offhand that I could think of. I think they were the only ones. Yeah.
Okay. So when you were young, and I'm talking like before kindergarten, do you have any musical memories? Anything you remember, like a song on the radio or something? Can you remember like first musical memories, or as best you can remember?
My first memory was I remember sitting at all of us sitting, my family and I sitting at the watching TV, because back in the day, you had the old school dial where you change the channels, manually. And one of us would go up and change it for the family. And I think it was Norma or Juan. I can't remember, but we were looking for something to watch. And I want to say it was Juan was changing the dial, and he landed on uh, it was a show they were showing, and it was Rod Stewart performing "If You Think I'm Sexy." I heard it, and something must have clicked with me, like being able to put two and two together. The fact that the song was on the radio at the time, and I think subconsciously I liked that song. But seeing it for the first time, for me, making the connection, something about it jumped out at me. It was just like, even then, like, this is what you're gonna do. You know what I mean? Like, it was very, you know, just it just jumped out at me and grabbed me. And I remember them changing it to the next channel, and I started screaming and crying, and they put it back. Oh, he wants to watch, you know, he wants to watch Red Stewart. I must have been like 4. Yeah, I must have been like 4. And to this day, you know, Jessica will tease me when that song's on the radio, because to this day I'm like, Rod Stewart, man, that's my boy. So yeah, that was the very first memory I can think of, music wise, you know, with anything to do with entertainment, you know, that and The Wiz. Because when I saw
The Wiz too?
Yeah, when we went to go see The Wiz, we saw it in Milan at the theater, the old theater there. And you know, I know you know the movie, but you know, for a 4-year-old to see that, I mean, that movie's out there, you know, and it's still, I vividly remember the characters coming out of the walls, the graffiti. You remember that?
Right. Yeah,
and that whole, I think escapism, that whole idea of being able to, you know, mentally just check out into another world, that was very inviting to me, you know. And I think that's what did it for me with that Rod Stewart video, you know, putting the entertainment thing together.
Right. Man, all these years I've known you, I never knew that Rod Stewart, Do You Think I'm Sexy, played a role for you.
Oh yeah, that's what got me going, man. Yeah. And I remember even when Kiss came out with their 4 albums, and Peter Criss had a single off of his.
Oh, the solo.
Yeah, and it sounded like Rod Stewart to me. You know, because his music was very much down that alley.
Yeah. So who else, like now, you know, once you got into school, grade school, what began to influence you musically?
Well, like growing up in this, you know, I was 5 when it was in 1980. I was 5. So, you know, from 75 on, my brother was heavily listening to Kiss, you know. And again, you know, when you talk about theater, you know, Kiss, that was all Kiss, you know, with the kabuki makeup and the whole glam scene, you know. And at that time they were doing disco music. But, you know, as a kid who I loved art, I've always loved art. Just looking at the records alone for me, you know, even if it wasn't Kiss, looking at a record sleeve, both sides, for me, I was always drawn to that as well. But growing up, yeah, I mean, for a long time, it was nothing but Kiss. Like, you know, for me, that was the only band that existed.
So what were some of your favorite songs by them?
Oddly enough, it was like some of the obscure songs. Like I really liked the solo albums, you know. And I one of them that really jumped out at me more so than Rock and Roll All Night was Shout It Out Loud. That anthematic you know, melody to me. And I like songs that are kind of anthem like Hey Jude. You know, they got the big endings, or, you know, the crowd singing along with it. You know, God Gave Rock and Roll to You. All those kinds of songs, those did it for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did Juan have a bunch of, like, all the albums?
Yeah, he did. He had all of them. Yeah. And I remember, gosh, they had kind of like a style change where even like Gene wasn't putting his hair in a bun anymore. He was kind of holding it long on the side. They did an album called The Elder and Creatures of the Night. And do you remember Night Flight, where they would do a video every Friday? Was it called Night Flight? I can't remember.
Oh yeah,
Where
yeah,
they did
yeah.
like Friday night fights or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, you're
They
right.
pinned
Yeah.
one music video against another. Yeah, they came out with "I Love It Loud," and that was a big video at that time, especially for Kiss. And that
Wow.
song and that video, I remember it like it was yesterday.
So that was like early '80s, wasn't it? Night Flight.
Yeah, I want to say it was. I want to say it was '82 that happened. That came out. I mean, Creatures of the Night was the album, and he had all the albums, but I remember that one, you know, because of that time. You know, I was staring at that record most of all of them.
So '82, you would have been like what, 7 maybe?
7.
You said
You're 7,
5
yeah.
and '80.
Yeah. Well, you're telling everybody my age now.
So that was, yeah. So that was influencing you already, even at 7 years old. You were
it was
had some type of influence on you.
Right. And by that time, I was asking, you know, I'd ask for like toy guitars all the time. I think I had a Kiss guitar too, one of those little nylon string toys that, you know. Yeah, I had a drum set too. Yeah.
Did you dress up as any of them for Halloween?
Not for Halloween. I think I was always like embarrassed as a kid to go out trick-or-treating, you know, full Gene Simmons, you know what I mean? But Juan painted us up. Yeah, he must not have had anything better to do, but he painted me and Bobby, my cousin, up. And I remember we both wanted to be Peter Criss, and we both wanted to be the drummer. And I think he was like, you let Bobby be the drummer, you'll be the guitar player. I'm like, all right. So I was Eric Carr as the guitar player. And he dressed us up. We put on a fake little Kiss concert, and he took pictures of us, you know, as you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who was your favorite Kiss member?
I think it was Ace, to be honest with you. Yeah. I mean, I never really thought about which one, but for some reason, it must have been the guitar. I think it was Ace. I think even to this day, I think he's a unique musician.
So going through grade school, any other music have an effect on you?
Duran Duran in the 80s. I was a big Duran Duran fan. I loved Duran Duran. You know, I had 2 of their records. I can't remember the first one I had, but I bought 7th and the Ragged Tiger, which had like I can't remember what song came off of that album. But I listened to Duran Duran and Michael Jackson. I mean, if you grew up in the 80s, you know, Michael Jackson was in there, and so was towards the latter end of the 80s, Prince. You know, I was a big Michael Jackson fan. You know, when Thriller came out, you know, everybody was listening to that, you know. So yeah.
Right.
You know, and then the obscure, you know, Cyndi Lauper and you know, one video I always liked was "Love Is a Battlefield."
Oh, Pat Benatar.
Pat Benatar, yeah, I like that song. You know, and like, and every now and then, like Journey, and even when Steve Perry brought out "Oh Sherry," I like that. So just, you know, the random single that would come out in the 80s, or some of those tunes that we were all listening to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because the 80s, early 80s, those were my high school years.
Right.
For like me and your brother Juan.
Yeah, yeah.
But yet those were your those were your grade school years.
Yeah.
So you're viewing it through grade school, and I'm viewing it through
Yeah.
high school.
Yeah, and I was just talking to a
How that
coworker
music.
about that. You know, he's an old soul, and we were talking about she said something referring to, like, imagine if you were in high school when, you know, when the height of rock was coming out, or the beginning of rock was coming out, you know, like 70s or whatever, or 80s. And like, it's funny because whatever genre you are, you hear those songs and it immediately takes you back, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah.
So when you were in grade school, had it happened yet? You know, with the different music coming at you, because you had MTV, you had
Yeah.
Kiss, you had the different music shows, Friday night videos, and things like that.
Yeah.
Had it happened yet to where you were saying to yourself, I want to play guitar? Had that happened yet, or is that still to come a little bit later?
It wasn't prominent yet. I mean, but yeah, there was something. I knew I wanted to do something, you know, in the entertainment business. I knew that there was a calling. Something was calling me, you know, in that direction. But not prominently yet. I think I even abandoned the idea for a while. But it was always there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I had, you know, like, as you know now, I didn't start with rock music. You know what I mean? It was my entrance into music was Mexican music. You know, and I didn't know that it was going to happen, but it just, with the group of guys I was hanging out with at the time, we all got the idea from going and seeing these live bands. You know, these bands that were coming in from Chicago or Texas to put on a show here at Danceland, because they weren't having shows like that, you know, back in the day. When they started bringing those shows
Right.
to the Quad Cities, we would all go, and we would all, you know, we'd all be there before the band got there. The band would show up, and then it was like, you know, and I think somehow we were mesmerized by that. So then
how old were you around this time?
This was when, man, I was 12. So this came about real early. I mean, not, you know, not ridiculously early, but yeah, shortly after, you know, having abandoned the idea, I came back to it. Because, you know, I went to junior high after elementary, and like I said, that's the 80s. And then as I started getting older, coming out of junior high was when, not necessarily coming out, I think I was still in junior high, was when the idea really started to sprout a seed. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was almost like we said, we're going to do this as a group. And we basically just pointed at each other and said, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. And I didn't, you know, guitar, well, I didn't know how to play. I didn't have any concept of what I was doing. But
yeah,
Chip, my friend Chip, his grandfather is one of the Ramos brothers. So I knew that if I needed any help, that there was going to be help there, you know, and that's when I kind of really started to really think about doing this, you know, and but I didn't have a guitar yet. It was just an idea, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
you guys were going to, was it like at the Call or Danceland?
It was Danceland.
Where were these shows at that you were seeing?
We had seen shows prior of some, you know, some bands that had come into town. Like we saw La Mafia, we saw Los Chamacos de Jaime Dianda, and then it was when we saw La Sombra. That was that particular show where we all got together and we're like, you know, let's do this. And we started taking it seriously. So
you guys, none of you guys were playing yet.
No.
But you guys were. Well,
Chipito was he was like a music prodigy. at a very young age, kind of like Dude. Very much like Dude. But he was playing drums at the time. I think he knew a little bit of accordion.
Okay.
I can't remember, but and so because he was a part of the clique, and like I said, because his grandpa was, Mr. Ramos and his brother, we kind of had them on our side. So we kind of knew that if we took this thing seriously, that we were going to have some support, And then
Okay.
a couple months later, I went down to the Music Mart, Jerry's Music Mart. Well, it was Gary's at the time, here by the Donut Delight on First Avenue, in Silvis.
Right.
And for me walking into the guitar shop, it was like I would equate it to somebody buying or walking into a car shop that has nothing but vintage cars. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to touch anything, and it was the angels singing from the clouds when I walked into the store. But then I took a look at the price tags, and then I was like, oh yeah, this is never gonna happen. You know what I mean? But my father and my mother, they made a deal with me. They said, if they wanted me to do some house chores, which I didn't do. But I did paint. They wanted me to paint the porch. I remember that. And I was painting, and I did do some chores, but it wasn't anything really, backbreaking. But I had to earn it. I remember that. And I had it was a Gremlin guitar, so it was like it was for my size, my hands, because I was younger. And I remember getting excited because I had like $75 down on it. And it was like 120. So I was like, oh, I'm almost there, man. And then I had a birthday. And that birthday, my mom and dad snuck out. And I just had a feeling. I had some weird feeling about it. And when they came back, my mom was holding it in her hand. And it was just like,
Yeah.
next level. Yeah. And I'm going to be honest with you. I had it for about a year, and I was only tinkering around with it, trying to figure it out. And then it was Jose Ramos who took me aside and said, okay, there was something going. I was making a connection with the sound. Like, my ear was grabbing the end of the chord, like on the last, the first, second, and second string. So I was playing like finding the different tones of the chord, but I didn't know like where to put my, play a bar chord on the fifth off the fifth or the sixth string. But I knew what notes to combine for off the first and second. So then Mr. Ramos pulled me aside. Jose. He says, you're trying to play this chord. You're in the right spot, but you need to add. Oh, okay. So he started showing me this. You play this chord here, you can also move it here. Oh. And then when we started getting the hang of things, and we took on their method of yelling the chords out, which in Spanish is primera, segunda, tercera. You know what I mean? So right. There I was, primera, and it's funny because, like I said, I've always been, I love rock. I'm a rockhead. And yet I didn't start with rock music. I mean, my passion, was in rock music, but I had no idea I was going to start like that. And I didn't even realize I was in it and moving already. Before I knew it, we were playing live, and the first gig we did was an event at the VFW. It had to have been somebody's kids or somebody's wedding, and La Frama was playing, name drop. And in the middle of one of their sets, they said, okay, we're going to invite this new band to come out, and they're going to play for the first time. And we kind of like, all right, we got 15 minutes, you know what I mean? And because we were at the VFW, we all ran to parties. Like, this band's going to come out, they're going to play for the first time. And we were all nervous. Oh, let's all go to Hardee's. And we were all, getting gassed up and worked up. We were in the bathroom trying to pump each other up. My ears just went instant red. I remember them getting butterflies and my ears were hot. And then about 5 minutes to go, we went and they were, waving us over, and it was like, oh my God, this is either gonna work or we're gonna make fools out of ourselves. And the funny thing about it was somewhere in the middle. So we had nothing to be embarrassed about, and it didn't sound as bad as it could have. It was good enough to get, the little amount of respect that we needed to say, okay, we can keep going with this. And so, so we did. And little by little, each gig we did got a little bit better and a little bit better. And we started figuring it out. Growing up too, though, seeing you guys play, like you and Phil, when I was younger, I couldn't wrap my head around, like, when I seen you guys playing, it was like, oh, these guys are, musicians. And I had no concept that it's like, oh, it's just Troy or it's just Phil. You know what I mean? For me, it was larger than life. It was, because going to the Hero Street Jam when I was younger, it was one thing because I knew my friends were going to be there. I knew my sister was going to be there. My brother was going to be there with their friends. And, everybody's spread out. Everybody's having a good time. But as I got older, I started going to the Hero Street Jam for another reason. And that was to hear the bands, and listen to the music. And, I slowly went from being front stage to backstage, and it just all happened. But it's funny how that happens, how it could turn from being just you're a spectator to, the people who were doing it and all of that. It was, when I was little, it was larger than life. And then when I got older, it was just like, I'm kidding, man.
So how old were you when you got the guitar?
I was 12. But I was 13 when I really started learning how to play. And I had
when
no
you guys
concept.
did that first gig.
Yeah, we were called La Generación was the name of the first band we ever had.
Okay.
And we went through various changes. My cousin Bobby, Chepito, Coco Ramos, Gilbert Venegas, the boxer. He played with us for a little bit. Roslyn Lopez, Irma Lopez. So there was a bunch of different members at different times throughout. And then it progressed from there. I joined Daniel. Daniel was doing Daniel and Andy and like the brothers and the Hood Boys. We're starting to tag along, and then they decided we want to do something, and by that time we didn't know what we were going to be doing with La Generación anymore. And so they kind of persuaded me to go and help them out. And then that turned into me playing with those guys shortly thereafter.
How old were you then?
Then I was about 15, a veteran. A veteran with no mileage.
And by this time, like, what did you know on the guitar by this time? Like open chords, bar chords?
Yeah, bar chords. Well, by then, I may have taken a lesson already with Paul DePaul. And, he started showing me the scales and power chords. I didn't know much at the time, but I knew I was catching on, and he was showing me new things on how to learn how to play up and down, the fretboard. But in between that time, it was like from going from La Generación, I played guitar, but before I went over to work with Tormenta Latina, which was Daniel's band, I got the courage to step up to the mic. And so that was towards the end of Generación, that was my first time ever singing into a microphone. you know. And so that was a totally different thing for me, which I'm still learning.
Hey, never ends, right?
Yeah. So yeah, that was that. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, by that time I was learning with Paul, and he was showing me more. And I had played with Daniel for a short period of time, and then when Daniel got invited to, well, no, I don't think it was that time. It was we had joined, and we had brought new musicians in. We took a break for a while, and then we made it wasn't really a bandmate change. Like, we had totally different members. And then while we were playing with Tormenta Latina, we got offered a chance to play with one of the best bands in the Quad Cities at the time, which was Jovenazo, which was called Jovenazo because we were all young. You know, we all could play the instruments we played. It was a good sound, and they were booked all the time. And to be honest, we were making really good money, you know, for the age that we were. And it's funny, a lot of people don't take into consideration that, you know, we were 15, 16 years old, and we were playing in places that had open bars. You know, for 15 and 16-year-olds, that's not, you know,
Yep.
in a country where you're supposed to be 21. And, you know, for us, it was never, I mean, we were playing at these places with open bars with security that were cops, you know, and it was just the way it was. There was never any questioning. I'm sure you probably know that. You've been through the same thing. So, it was shortly thereafter they asked me and Daniel, both of us, Daniel and I, to join Jovenazo, and we did, and got to meet a lot of good people. We, you know, our bandmates were just like us. You know what I mean? It was still Chip and Nuna Enriquez from Muscatine, Rudy Enriquez. So we were slowly stepping our game up. Yeah.
Remember what some of the music you guys were doing?
Oh, the staples. You know, Negra Tomasa, Juana la Cubana. But there was a certain style of music that the band played with a lot of offbeats. You know, and I was like that. You know, that particular style, and it was almost as if we were looking for the spots to put the offbeats in. Once I was in, you know, we kind of were all on the same page. But yeah, a lot of the staples, La del Moño Colorado, the hits, all the hits. Yeah. So then from Jovenazo.
How often did you guys practice?
Man, sometimes we practiced every weekend, or not weekend, every week, and sometimes it was every other week. You know, sometimes we were like, we haven't practiced for 3 weeks. You know, I mean, it just as often as we could get together, because our practice space was in Muscatine.
Oh, okay.
You know, and when we had school, you know, it wasn't as easy to just go during a weekday.
Right.
So, but yeah.
What happened after Jovenazo?
So after Jovenazo, I played with Jovenazo for about a year and a half. And then I started getting the itch, and I convinced myself that I was ready to do something on my own, like give it a try at writing my own music. And Daniel was the first one that I hung out with, who I really sat down and we really started like trying to do this songwriting thing together. And the very first song
was this in English or in Spanish?
This was in English. I knew I wanted to do a rock album. I wanted to do something rock oriented, and Daniel was the perfect person, because I had met Daniel and we had done the Spanish thing, but I knew Daniel was a Kiss fan. And being a Kiss fan, I'm like, you know, two Kiss fans think alike.
Yeah.
but the first song we wrote was a ballad called So Far Away. And I think uh, sitting down and doing it together, I think right off the bat, when we were done writing it, we knew we were onto something. Like, I mean, I knew that I didn't know what I was doing, but at the end of that, I knew, okay, well, I think I can do this. You know what I mean? And so then we started dabbling in songwriting, and that's when I got the concept of mirror, of going in the studio and recording my own stuff. And that's when I contacted you and Phil to help me out. And yeah, it was our first try. We got Joe Jones on the guitar, and it was Daniel and I, and you or Phil was when we went into the studio. It was either you or Phil, because I think you did 3 songs, and I think he did 3 songs. And yeah, so we recorded that album. I didn't really, I mean, for me, it was like, okay, well, yeah, this is a high school, you know, it was, for what it was a nice little first attempt at writing music. Now that I look back on it, I kind of like, I'm proud of what I did for that time. It was like, you know, I had to go through that phase. And it was fun recording it and doing that, being in that atmosphere for the first time, you know, and going through that whole experience. Because every album we've done, even to now, I've gained something out of it. You know, there's been something new to learn, or, you know, there's something that I enjoy taking away from it. And in that time, now that I look back on it, you know, I kind of cherish that.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. You know, you're talking about like when you and Dan, you wrote that first song, and it's cool that you found somebody to do that with, because like there's some guys that like doing original music, and then there's some guys that, you know, they don't want to do any original, they just want to do covers. And so that's cool that you had that. And then it's also, I mean, I remember the first time I wrote my first song, like at 13 or 14, whatever I was, probably 14. But, you know, you know, it's nothing that you would consider good, but there is like this sense of accomplishment, like, wow, I can actually do this. I can take something out of the air and bring a melody or some chords together, and it's actually, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. And I think that's exactly what it is that I cherish about it. You know, it's like, that's us.
And it never ends. I mean, it's still there. It's still there to this day. Like, that thing is, you know.
And I think now that
you're hoping you're getting better at it, but.
Yeah, I think now, and I've even told Jessica, like, you know, now that I look back, I'm really proud that I did that, because it's a hard thing to do, like, to put your feelings out on paper and share it with the world. You know what I mean? You know, even if the world isn't going to hear it, at least you're sharing it with people. You're opening yourself up. And it's kind of hard to do. And I could have gone the other way and said, well, I'm just not going to, you know, this is too scary of a situation. I'm just not going to do it. And now that I look back, I see, you know, all these albums that I recorded. I'm proud that I did it, because I can look back and say that, you know, I didn't do covers. I did my own stuff, you know.
Right.
So, but yeah.
Do you remember all the songs? All the songs on the Mirror album?
Yeah. I'll play them. I'd have to go back and relearn them.
No, I mean, do you remember the titles?
Yeah. It was, so I had Hero. Oh man, you're really throwing Mrs. Sugar. Yeah, Chains. Wide Open. Or no, it was called Open. Mirror, the title track. And I can't remember the last one, man, to be honest with you. But yeah.
Do you remember what was influencing your writing? Like what bands or artists or anything that were influencing you?
Some of
I mean,
it was
obviously
Kiss.
Kiss.
Yeah, some
Yeah,
of it
some would
was
be
Kiss, but some of it was a mixture of a lot of different things. That kind of was what I like. 'Cause, like for me, Daniel was my first songwriting partner, and if I could still be writing music with him today, I would. I'd be doing that. Because I've always liked what happens when I team up with somebody, because something original happens, because it's not me putting the music out there, it's somebody else coming up with the chords and the progressions, and they're using their influence without me knowing what that influence is, and I can add lyrics to it. You know what I mean? And I've always liked doing that. So yeah, I think it was just a mismatch of what we'd been listening to, or what we grew up listening to, that we wanted to create at the time.
Okay.
So
Now that
so
Hero
yeah, and
song
even
was
Joe.
that Hero song became that was kind of a popular
Yeah,
with your friends and stuff. I mean,
yeah,
it got some
yeah,
notoriety, right?
yeah. It did. And it's kind of a funny thing, because I grew up on Hero Street like you did, you know what I mean? And there's always been a connection between growing up on Hero Street and the streets between that we all grew up on. Hero was kind of like a tip of the hat to Hero Street. And at the same time, before I went into the studio, I had an uncle who passed away. And he was the only other uncle I had who played an instrument. Well, I take that back. Who married into the family. So they weren't direct, they married into the family. They weren't directly like brother and sister of my father. And he played trumpet. He was a vet. And I was really close to him, because he played the trumpet, and he always wanted to accompany me, but at that time I wasn't too skilled, and I was a bit shy about playing what I played, because I wasn't, seasoned. And he knew how to play bugle really well. And I remember him coming and us sitting down and him wanting to play bugle with me, and then having that connection of that connection that musicians have. And then shortly thereafter he passed away. And he was a vet, so I kind of wrote it for him, and about Hero Street. And that song, yeah, it got some notoriety locally. We played that at the Mark when it had just opened. They had Sigma Lambda Beta, my brother's fraternity, had an event to raise money for the Hero Street Monument at the Mark, and so they invited us to perform it. I still remember being so nervous. Because I had to talk. It wasn't just go, who are you guys? Why are you guys here playing? I had to come up with something to say. I sort of this, and Phil makes fun of me to this day. It's like this song was for those guys who went off to that war, those wars. And I remember to this day when we were printing T-shirts, every now and then he'd be like, "Hey, those wars." Yeah, so yeah, but I remember being real nervous, and even singing because I have it on video somewhere. You could hear that I'm nervous, like kind of like McCartney doing his "Love Me Do." You can just hear my voice kind of shaking
right.
in the song. Yeah, God, because sometimes it could just be god awful, man. Just the pressure, and everybody's looking at you. Everybody's watching you. And actually, it's funny because when we were in high school, they invited me to go on the radio program that they had at the high school. And I was like, okay, cool. What are you going to do? So then I was like, okay, well, we'll do Let It Be. And Daniel was going to accompany me. And I kept telling him, let's practice and we'll get together on this day. Well, we didn't make it, and so we got a few weeks left, man. We got to get together. We'd set a practice. He didn't make it. Not to throw him under the bus or anything.
Yeah.
And then I even told him, hey, I'll meet you on the corner. You walk from Glenview, and I'll walk from UT, and we'll meet on that corner. We'll go back. We'll record what we have to record. I walk down to the corner. I'll meet you there, Irv. Wasn't there. So I'm walking back to UT. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, it's because I'm gonna do this alone, and I started coming down with a cold, and that feeling you get, you don't really realize you have a cold yet, but your throat starts getting bumps on the top of it, and so I went to go be on this program, and it was the worst experience I'd ever had in my life.
Oh no.
My voice was really bad. I'm sitting there playing and just struggling to get through the song, sweating, feeling the heat. The guy from the rodeo show sitting there with the microphone like this so he can pick up my guitar, right? And I just remember thinking, like, I just want this to be over. Somebody shoot me now. You know what I mean? Like, and then because it was on live radio, and then so as I was approaching the end of the song, I was just like, oh my gosh, please. And then I remember finishing, and the teacher going, I never knew you could play guitar so well. Like, oh my gosh, it was just so bad. And then I remember Steve Solis, my buddy at the time, say, hey, I went to his house a couple of days later. Say, hey, Irv, I got something I want to show you. So, all right. And he pushes play, and it's me. Oh man, don't ever play that again, dude. Like, don't do that. It was horrible, but it was an experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And was it Let It Be? Is that what you did?
It was Let It Be, and it was around that time that we were getting ready to. I think we were already recording the album. And in my mind, it was like, we'll go on the show, we'll nail it. You know what I mean? And it was the exact opposite. And it ended up being an experience.
So you guys were recording this album when you guys were still in high school then?
Yes. No, you know what? It was my senior year that I did that. And it was getting ready to be summer. And it was that summer that we went into the studio. I remember it was the first year that I was coming out of high school.
Okay.
So we were writing already.
Yeah. You guys were already a group getting it already during high school.
Yeah.
And then when you got
when
you
it
graduated,
was in high school. Yeah, and it was
summer after.
The summer after, because I remember Luke was a senior after I was already out, and he knew Joe Jones, and that's how we got Joe in the group, the guitar player. So yeah.
Cool. So
yeah, man.
Did you guys do any type of gigs and stuff as Mirror?
We did.
Outside of the mark?
We did one, but it was legendary. There used to be a place here called The Pit in downtown Silvis. It's where the karate place is now. And so we were coming fresh off our gig at the Mark. And it was this, little club or whatever. And that to us was like the big follow-up or whatever. But we got, they got their friends to come down, and there was a nice little group of people that came to see us. And, we put on a full show. Like, there were 2 bands before us. And then, and I remember having to beg Phil to do this gig because I knew we weren't going to we didn't know any bass players, oddly enough. And I had this long conversation on the phone with Phil. He's like, I told you, I can't, you know what I mean? Like, I did the album for you, and he used to tell me he was retired. I'm retired now, and I mean, I wanted to fill in, pun intended, the bass position, and like, and it had to be Phil, because Phil was a good friend, and he was a Kiss fan, and you know, we loved the way he played. I mean, he was the only professional. You know what I mean? And I broke down to tears. You know, come on, bro, you're the only one, bro. You got to do it, man. You know, and it had to have been the tears. I mean, he must have heard that I was devastated and just, all right, you know. But he did. You know, he was a trooper, and he did the gig, and yeah, so it was fun. It was fun to have that first experience. And then shortly thereafter, we didn't have, you know, everybody kind of went their separate ways. You know, Joe was going to go to college, and you know, we just, you know, we didn't have a solid bass player, a person who could get with us all the time. And so then we just kind of, you know, put an end to it. And then I started playing, you know, Hispanic music again, and playing those different gigs. We came out with Tormenta Latina Part 2. I played with them, and then I just, I felt like I felt like I was nearing the end of my interest in Hispanic music, in Latino music. And then I knew I wanted to record an album of my music with my friends, you know what I mean? And so then I started slowly writing Broken. The first few songs on Broken, Where I Want to Be, and Paloma, I took to Phil, Daniel and I showed Daniel first, and then Daniel started trying to put these drum parts to it. And then we took it to Phil and said, this is what we're working on. This is what we're doing. I remember telling Daniel, I want to work on these songs good enough so that when we take them to Phil, you know, they're already started, and, you know, there's a clean concept there for him to work with. And then we went with him, and we started showing him, and he's like, you know, yeah, this is, I like this, you know what I mean? And then that's when he started coming in and playing his groove to it. And then we got everybody involved again. Ruben Cerda, who was, you know, my former sister-in-law's brother, who was a really good piano player. He came in and did some piano and some string work on that, on Where I Want to Be. And then we built from there. You know, we built the album off of those two songs. We brought in, I had Paloma and I had Where I Want to Be. We had them all done without vocals, with some dummy vocals, I think. And I was playing baseball at the time. Our families, you know, came together and formed a baseball team for the farm league here in the Quads in Illinois. And Tavo, my cousin's cousin, you know, we grew up with the Jimenez, and he was a guitar player, and we used to, you know, hang out, and we'd watch his band, and then, you know, they'd watch our band, and we'd get together and hang out, whatever. I showed him the songs, and he was like, you know, I like this. You know, I really like this. He's like, I think I could put something to it, because I don't think the guitar was in there yet for Paloma. And then we started hanging out, and he started trying to put something to it, and I liked what he did. I was, you know, why don't you come in and put those parts to it? He said, I got some songs of my own. And then he showed me his tunes. I said, you know what, come on board, and let's start working together. And that's how we started, you know, feeding off each other. It took us about a year to record Broken with Dave Ruby here in Silvis. And so, yeah, that was, and little by little, we pieced the whole thing together. I think we recorded 12 songs, and we cut it down to 10. And then the concept kind of started taking its own life. You know, it's funny because now it almost seems like destiny had a big part in where I am now. But yeah, I mean, I was really proud of that album, like, because that for me was a jump, a big jump forward. And I knew that we had something solid to work with in the future. Yeah, so that was that. Then that was Go ahead.
What do you like the lyric side? Do you like the chord side? What side do you like when you're writing? Or both?
Yeah, kind of both. Because for Broken, I grew lyrically. As you do as you're getting older, things start getting better. But I think in on Broken was the first time I could put a melody, with the chords on the guitar, uh, with the lyrics, and combine them. I was getting better at that, at hearing what worked and what didn't. Um,
Mm.
and so, and being able to work on stuff like I said, where Gus could now come in and say, "Hey, check this out. I don't have anything for this," and show me the melody on the guitar, the chords on the guitar, and it was clean slate, like blank piece of paper. Go ahead and write something to it, and I always liked that. And so then, some of that stuff that came out was that, and ironically, uh, our bass player Sean Yeager, who he was his father was a preacher or a minister, and he one time he let us use one of the spaces there for a rehearsal. We were getting ready. We were working on the album, and we went, and something happened where he was just like he's. I was working on this lick, and he started showing us what would turn out to be Broken. This lick that he played on the bass, and it was weird because he showed us that that um that lick, and before we knew it, we were each dropping our parts in. It was almost like it just happened, and that
Nice.
magic is hard to do. It doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen. And that particular night, even Sean contributed something that we didn't even know was going to come out of thin air. And so then that lick he brought into the whole thing. That song was titled Broken, and that ended up being the title that we picked for the album. So,
Mm.
his contribution was, even though he was, you know, in the background just playing bass, he contributed the biggest part of the album.
Wow.
Yeah.
You said you recorded 12 songs, but cut it down to 10.
We cut it down to 10. Yeah.
Where are the other two? Have they ever been heard?
Yeah, we a couple of years back we released the album because we wanted to do this 20. Well, we did this 20th anniversary version where
Oh, okay. All right.
we included those two songs,
Okay.
so
So those
that's
two.
out there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know.
There was a
I didn't know if
song.
they were still out there,
Yeah, Daniel
still in the
wrote
vault.
Daniel wrote 3 songs for it. He next day on the album are Daniel and Gus's song. They wrote that together, and then he wrote a song called I'm Not the Only One," and then he and Gus worked together on a song called Cursed, and the chorus part of Cursed is the snippet we cut and put at the beginning of the album. So at the beginning of the album, where you hear that backward record being played or whatever with those backward guitars, there's a part that you hear where it's, "Oh babe, I know you'll be all right." That's that snippet that we used from that song. So I said, well, we may not use the whole song, but I like that little piece. Let's throw it in the front.
So how'd you guys come up with the ideas of like recording the guitars backwards, or even knowing that you could do it?
I'm not gonna lie. It was a page out of the Beatle book. I was always,
yeah, obviously.
yeah, I was always a fan of Tomorrow Never Knows and the backwards guitars. I mean, I didn't realize all the effort that they went through to put that together. But that song for me, like, it was, I didn't realize it then, but the meaning of the song, um, for some reason it jumped out at me, the song itself and the backwards guitars. And Gus coming into the band, he was a Beatles fan, so there was always that. Uh, at that time, Daniel was even being heavily influenced by the Beatles. So all three of us were kind of like, trying to do something original and trying to come up with different ideas, and wherever we could sneak a little Beatle thing in, we would. even in Where I Want to Be, one of the lyrics is "Tell me I can fly like Lucy in the sky." You know, just references.
Well, did you go to Ruby and say, "Hey, we want to do some guitars backwards," or
Well,
like
it's a
how
funny
did that come about?
it's a funny thing. Well, yeah. Because Ruby, I found Ruby. I used to go to co-op tapes and records all the time, and Ruby and I developed a relationship there where whenever I'd walk in, he'd be like, "I got the new Kiss, you know, bootleg," because Phil turned me on to the concerts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was buying concerts at that time, just watching concert after concert after concert. And I would walk in, and Ruby was my guy up there at co-op for like collectibles, whatever. And we got to talking one day, and he told me he had a studio. So, you know, that's where Ruby came into the picture. But yeah, Ruby was really easy to be like, "Hey, you know, tomorrow never knows." And yeah, of course, you know what I mean? So that we kind of went up to him and we're like, "Hey, so is there a way," you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
that we could reverse the guitar, and, you know, it was just a button for him, you know? Yeah, we can do that. And then, so we started listening to different, because what Gus did was he played I think he may have even used, yeah, I think he played that specifically for that. So what he did was he recorded a bunch of different parts, and then Ruby reversed all of them. And he said, "Well, why don't you guys listen to these?" And we listened to him and said, "Okay, that little part right there, we like that." And so we took that little piece and put it at the beginning. Yeah.
Were you guys recording analog or digital? Was it digital yet, or?
It was digital. He was already recording on a PC. That was new at that time. But he
Yeah,
was
that's
already,
what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'm guessing what year was this that you guys recorded that?
96.
Oh, okay.
96
All right.
when we went, no. Sorry. It was 98. It was 98. It was
Okay.
finished in 99. September of 99. So yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it was kind of new technology then, you know?
Yeah. And so we'll close out. We'll have to do a part 2, Irvy.
Yeah.
So
Stay
what
tuned.
happened though? Yeah, what happened after the album came out? Like what began to happen for you guys?
We got the Dispatch did a story on us, and we started getting like random. At that time, Juan was kind of working with us, and he had some people who he knew in the radio industry, and we went for an interview at a Chicago radio station, and that was different because there were a couple people calling in, and it was like, whoa, you know what I mean? Because that was just next level.
Mm-hmm.
And then before we knew it, we were being offered an opening gig for this rock band from Mexico who was known, and it was at the House of Blues. It was a band called El Tri. They wanted us to open for them, and we had only done a couple gigs here. We were not ready for that. You know what I mean? It was just like, what? Like, no, we're not ready. Like, and it was nerve-wracking. The gig never came into fruition, but I remember the pressure. And we played gigs around here. We played Ripco. Ripco was the first place locally that opened its doors up to us. And to this day, if we contacted Ripco and we told them who we were, they let us play there in a heartbeat. So yeah, I mean, just small gigs here in the Quad Cities, getting the band out, known, sending the music out and to all the different places that we could. And it was really just getting our feet wet for the first time.
How did that band from Mexico get to know who you guys were?
It was I don't know if it was through a contact through the radio station, but my brother was the one who called me. And I don't know if we also did a couple gigs in Chicago. Actually, we traveled to Texas to do a gig in Texas, in Corpus Christi. And our bass player couldn't make it out there. So Gus's sister, Margie, who played the bass in a Tex-Mex band, actually sat down and learned the whole album, note per note. And I remember just being really impressed with, because I was nervous. I was real nervous about somebody else taking Sean's spot. for this gig, because it's like we gotta find somebody who knows how to play. And then we had rehearsals before we left. We had one rehearsal, and then when right away she put that whole, you know, that feeling, the nervous feeling, she put to bed real quick. I had learned that she learned how to play the whole album, and so she could do it. And we went and we did that. And somewhere through the contacts that either my brother or Gus knew, came that opportunity that they were starting to wonder if we would be able to open for them. So.
And how did you feel as your music was starting to get out there? You know, like, you know, it always starts with your immediate, you got your family and your immediate friends.
Right.
But like when you said you're at that radio station, you know, and now you're realizing, oh, wow, there's people that I don't even know that are listening to it.
Yeah, that it was a lot of intimidation, psychological. I didn't feel good enough. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
In some aspects, I mean, I was really proud of the album, but to take it to another level, I think psychologically, it didn't bother me, but I needed to be prepared in the event that something like that could happen, because it's very, like, you try to be humble, you know what I mean? And then the people around you kind of can blow your head up. And so I think that's what I had a problem with, you know, letting my head get too big or think, oh, we're going to be it. I never wanted to say anything because I always felt like that would come back and bite me. But I knew from that experience that, well, maybe I'm onto something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
now, did you guys distribute that on your own?
Yeah. And as you know, that can be challenging, you know.
Yeah.
But Juan and I mean, I think Gus can hustle, you know, to a certain point. And I think my brother can too, but we needed more outside influence for sure. And you know how that can be in the music industry. You kind of have to watch who you're dealing with. And so, yeah, I mean, trying to stay grounded was my biggest thing, you know, because psychologically I could easily take myself out. Yeah.
I remember when I used to DJ over at St. Ambrose.
Yeah.
They would get tons of CDs,
right,
from independent groups.
Yeah.
You know, just trying to get some airplay.
Right.
And I mean, most of them never got played, you know, because they weren't known or whatever, you know. And so you know, that's hard for a band to sit there and trying to get their music out there, you know, when you don't know somebody, you're just sending it out and with a letter or something, hoping that somebody will play it or something like that.
Right. Yeah. It's not easy. It's not easy because, you know, sometimes people who get played are just, you know, the DJ's nephew, you know what I mean? Or politics will play a part in it somewhere, you know? And this new album is real. It could be misconstrued as something political. And it's a big step that you're taking. And I think that some of the places that have the album, because some of the radio stations have the album, are maybe afraid to approach it from that perspective, you know, but it is what it is. You know, it's like you said, it's hard to pass around, but when it has that on it as well, you know, or when you're coming from, because this new album is very spiritually motivated, and even that can make some people pump the brakes.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. And I find it interesting, like, you know, you said that Broken come out in 96, 98, whatever.
Yeah.
And back then, you know, there was no Spotify, there was no streaming necessarily.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And now it's a whole nother thing. You know, I mean, not that one is easier than the other, but they both got their challenges of how you're trying to get your music played.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's something else. I sat back on this new album, which it's the only reason being is because it's hard to do everything on your own. You know, it's hard. You know, because you're spending time doing one thing, and you're taking away from time you could be using doing something else. And planning for that can you can step on your own feet in a certain way. You know, I know that I can get this album on. I mean, I'm gonna put this album on iTunes and Spotify, but kind of wanted to give people a chance to listen to what I've been putting out through these 3 singles. And I think it's worked to a certain extent, but just getting it out, it's tricky now. You know, I think there's a desensitization through the years with people and their attention spans and the different services that they use, the different apps that are used, Instagram, Facebook. You know, I don't do TikTok, and these new ones are coming up as well. So it's tricky. Yeah, and it was none of that then. You know, it was all word of mouth, or, you know, hey, check out my album, or, you know, people like you who were lucky sometimes to have played on something, you know. But, you know, funny thing about it is our second go years later, when we changed the lineup and we brought my cousin in and we became a trio where I jumped on the bass, people knew who we were. Some people knew who we were. And that it was just weird. It was weird to hear that. Like, oh yeah, I remember you guys. Like, well, how? Where? You know what I mean? But yeah, kind of got the ball rolling. Yeah.
So when you guys were getting the album out there and starting to promote it, you know, you said you did a show, Chicago and Texas. Were you guys like being, and I don't know, you know, like you said, Juan was helping you out here or there, but like, were you marketing it as a Mexicans playing rock music, or were you trying to appeal to all? You know, like, how was that going? You know, because you were talking about that Mexican band, possibly you guys opening for them.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering if there was that, you know, with you and Daniel.
Right.
And
yeah, and it was a tricky thing because a lot of people don't know. We opened our first gig. Well, I don't know if it was our first gig, but we got booked. Yeah, I think it was our first gig at Viva, and it was tricky because we did one of our Spanish songs. We had break dancers at that time come and break dance to the music, to the Spanish song. And it's this rock band setting up their amps, you know, with their Fender and looking like a rock band who's going to play to a Mexican crowd. You know what I mean? It was a bad booking. And that was our first exposure to who we were. Everybody ran into the community center. I think there was complaints of the place being too packed for how fast it got packed. You know what I mean? But there was a whole crowd left, even though they were scattered, who kind of understood what we were trying to do and were hanging out and were watching us and were digging what we were doing. It's a funny thing because we did our thing, and it was, you know, a lot of people don't know that there's Spanish songs on our album, you know, and trying to cater to one particular genre or one particular culture, it's tricky because here we are playing Mexican rock music to a crowd that doesn't want to hear these amps being blown in their ear. And even though it was Mexican, it was, the lyrics were in Spanish. They still didn't want it. Now you flip the coin where you're playing at places like Ribco, and it's like, who are these guys playing this Mexican music? You know what I mean? Singing in Spanish. You know what I mean? It was wherever you went. If you go to somewhere and play American music to a Spanish crowd, they're not going to like it, and vice versa. So we were a tricky band to book. You know, I think going to Chicago was a big,
because everybody's trying to label.
Yeah, they're waiting. Then that's the first thing that they're going to try and do. You know, who are these guys? And the second that you play, they're going to try and label you. But going to Chicago and being on the radio station, I think that clarified it, you know, because they were talking to us in advance before we were going to play, asking us what we did, and well, there's Spanish stuff on here. And people were calling and asking about the Spanish stuff because it was, I think, a Spanish program, but they were doing it in English. So no, I take that back. It was a Spanish interview. And so we got a chance to say, well, we're playing these songs. And they played our Spanish songs on the radio, and people were calling in like, hey, I like that song. And that's what blew my mind. So going to play there, you know, they kind of knew what was going on. Of course, nobody went, but they were calling in and asking about it. So yeah, they knew what we were going to do. Yeah. But even, I mean.
Yeah, I find the Lobos.
Yeah.
The Lobos have that same problem because I remember when they came here for the Blues Fest.
Yeah.
The Mexican community wanted to hear Mexican songs, but
right.
they were hired to play blues.
Right. Which they are blues, you know, band.
and
yeah.
So, right.
So,
and
are you gonna play? Are you gonna play
dilemma.
Your Spanish, right, to the blues fans, or are you gonna play? You know, yeah, it's a tricky, and I think that's what mainly caused me to, for the next two albums, not to write in Spanish. You know, and in those two albums, I always thought, okay, well, it'd be good to go back to Spanish, but I'm gonna wait for the right time. You know, I didn't know it was gonna be a pandemic, you know, but yeah, you know, that was the tricky part of it was, you know, well, do you want to go down that road again? You know, because then you corner yourself. You know, and now it's, I think because I'm older,
and you're not doing it
now, it's kind of like I don't really care. You know what I mean? As much. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're not doing it intentionally. It's what the people do that are listening. They're trying to label it.
Yeah.
And so they're saying, oh, Rodriguez, you know, okay, we're gonna hear some cumbias or something.
Yeah.
Or something, you know, and you're like, no.
Right.
And yeah, so it is tricky how to balance all that.
Right. Yeah. And you know, yeah, and I think I even questioned whether or not I could even write another Spanish song. And, you know, it was like riding a bike, you know, but then again, you know, you kind of got to try and cater to, you know, well, not really cater, but figure out how you're going to market it when you have two different languages going on. But, you know, social media.
Yeah, and even if you are.
Go ahead.
Even if you are singing in Spanish, then you got the people who are like, well, that's rock and roll. It's not a cumbia or corrido or, you know, that's what I want to hear or something, you know, so then people, you got to deal with that whole situation.
Yeah, they're never satisfied, Troy. They're never satisfied.
Yeah. And nothing against the people because they're the ones that buy the music and everything.
Right.
But they don't realize like the challenge that they put on the artist, because the artist is just wanting to play some music.
Right.
And the people are going that with they're already going with some, you know, preconceived notion in their mind of, oh, if it's a Mexican, then I want to hear whatever it is. You know how it is. I mean, it could be a corrido, but somebody else wants it to be tejano, you know, and somebody else wants it to be banda or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and that's
the racists, like, Troy, they're out there.
I don't like these guys because they're not banda.
Right. And you know, it's it's people either never being satisfied or it's a racial thing, and it's not even really race. It's just, you know, I want to hear. It's that whole thing. I want to hear some rock music. You put on the Beatles. Well, I want to hear the Eagles. You know what I mean? It's a certain thing. You got to be that, and to a certain extent, it's rough. But at the same time, it pulls back the curtain on who you're, and it leaves your fans, like the people who do know what you're doing and don't care. Hey, I like that song. It doesn't matter what I don't know what you're singing, but I like the song. Yeah. You know, and those people get it.
Right. That's what I was going to get into next is after you get through that first album and everything, whoever stuck around after that, then
Yeah.
you would know that, hey, these guys are with us
Right.
and they're going to follow us now to
Yeah.
whatever we do, because they get what we're trying to do.
Right. It weeds out the wannabes. So yeah, man.
Yeah. And like we were saying, it's not the crowd's fault, but they don't
Right.
realize
Yeah.
that a musician's just trying to play music. They're not
Right.
thinking of, how to market it or how to, what label to
Exactly.
put on it, because the musician just wants to play. They're not thinking of, well, I got to
Yeah.
stick to a certain style because I'm this or that, they just want to play.
Right.
But,
Right.
and it's pretty much that way with anything in life, though.
It's funny. When the first album came out, Broken, speaking of the VFW, they had it in the jukebox down there. Somebody knew who was, one of the bartenders or something. They put it in the jukebox down there, which is kind of cool. You know what I mean? I could go to the V and listen to my album.
Yeah, that's.
So yeah, I mean, there were a lot of cool little things that happened. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Irv, I think we'll close it out there, man. It's been
right on.
Been fun, man. Getting to know a little bit more about your career.
Yeah.
Now I learned about Rod Stewart.
I'm gonna go listen to that song.
Yeah,
right now.
And so maybe next week we can. Maybe next week we can finish up.
Yeah, for sure.
Get through the rest of the albums.
Right on. Yeah.
So whoever's watching, if you don't know, Vay here has a new album out. And where can they get it?
You contact me on Facebook. I've been more than happy to get you a copy. It's called One. It's the first Jaggaroo album where I recorded and wrote and recorded it on my own, produced, with the help of dude Miguel Martin. So on a couple tunes, yeah.
And then, so you did everything on there, basically, right?
Yeah, I did.
And
it was
McCartney's got something coming out Friday where he did everything.
Who's that? Yeah.
I said McCartney's got one coming out Friday.
Yeah, I do say that. This is like my McCartney album where he sat and recorded it, and it's got there's a few rough spots in areas, but I like that. I like that idea of a raw recording. So yeah, it was very, very, very much influenced by McCartney.
Yeah, it's got some nice tunes on there. I like them, man.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Oh, you were talking about McCartney.
Yeah, man. No, I haven't heard McCartney's yet. I don't rub in that area yet.
Yeah.
He never sent me no advance copy.
This goes to show you guys, you and Phil, how much of an influence you guys were on me. There was times in recording this new album that I was like, man, I can't wait for Phil to hear this. Can't wait for Troy to hear this. You know what I mean? Just certain spots where you kind of know you nailed it in a certain spot. So, yeah, always a kudos to you guys.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, man.
Thanks, man. I was smiling when I was listening to it.
Oh,
at different times.
Hear, man.
Oh man,
yeah.
I was like, I like that part, or I like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right on, brother. Well, like I said, I appreciate you having me.
All right,
appreciate you doing this. I like watching you guys, you and I like your other show as well. So keep doing what you're doing, man.
With Neil.
Yeah, Nervous Neil, man. I like that dude. I saw the episode, the recent episode where you guys were doing the TV shows, TV tunes or something like that, or the one-hit wonders. So yeah, okay, man. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, Irv. Hopefully we'll hook up next week.
Sounds good, man. I'll be here.
Later.
Take care.